We're now 2nd of May and we're in a different area of the park, one of the larger burnt areas, and what you can see here in front of you is a wall of new grown rhododendron growing up through old dead rhododendron that was killed with herbicide. Now evidently the fire was stopped here by the thickness of the new growing rhododendron, and you'll note that whereas the rhododendron leaves are scorched, they're not actually burnt up. So it's it's a very effective screen against fire spread, and ironically, because the wood was left so long after the initial clearance without any secondary clearance, a sufficient amount of rhododendron has come back, some of it now flowering, to stop the fire spreading at this location. However, as you'll see, this area has been devastated, is not an exaggeration. You can see the thinner growths there are burnt young rhododendron, and the rest are holly trees, arbutus trees, oak trees. You can see that the flames have literally reached to the very top of these good sized young oak trees. And what you have there in the middle is a mixture of large herbicide killed rhododendron, charred, and probably branches of some of the native trees. The edge of the wood here is several hundred metres from where I'm standing, so the trees are a wipeout in the area right out to the edge. Tree in front of me here is a coppice oak, and you can see there's 3 stems going up from the base. My guess is that the 3 coppice stems, which are burnt right to the top, are probably around 170 years old, which means that the base could be, who knows, another, I just has to throw a guess at it, maybe another 100 years, maybe 200, who knows. But what seems certain is that there has been a continuity of wood in this part of the national park over a long period of time. Again, off in the distance outside of the wood, you can see a rampart of high dense dead rhododendron killed with herbicide, but at the front of it a thick regrowth of younger rhododendron, which again has been sufficiently dense to stop the fire there from getting in at the back, which is a blessing in the very strange disguise of young rhododendron. I'm now getting down to towards the lower side of the wood, And again, the picture is similar. Oak trees burnt to very high up in the canopy. Signs of intense heat down below in the rocks, if I can find some examples there. Rocks which have been shattered in the heat. I'm up on a steep bluff here, and I'm still not as high as these trees, so I don't know how high they are, but they're a good size of oak tree. It's remarkable in this wood, there's complete abrasion. There's not one green thing to be seen in this whole area of woodland, nothing. It's all black, grey, some lighter rock as well. This rock here, you can see there's been a surface layer of the rock has cracked and fallen off. Panning down here along the edge of the fire, and in this area is a very clear demonstration of the role of rhododendron in the whole story. On the one hand, the dead rhododendron, 10-15 years old, killed 10 or 15 years ago, and the young rhododendron which came up. Once they were killed with herbicide, the young rhododendron come up, so you can see at the edge here, there's scorched, well, a little further in, there's the burnt stumps of rhododendron of all different sizes. Further to left, we have a wall of mature dead rhododendron, scorched. This is as far as the fire got. And underneath that, in the dead rhododendron, we have the new dense growth of young rhododendron, which has grown up over the last 10 years or so. And there are flower buds on some of those. Interestingly, though you're looking at young rhododendron which is scorched, when it gets this thick, virtually none of it is actually burned. The leaves are still there. And as you can see further behind that, very dense dead rhododendron which was not reached by the fire. And if we can zoom in there, further back you can see, okay, you've got thick dead rhododendron, and then underneath the back of it, dense new rhododendron coming in. So left to its own devices, what you'd have here is an extraordinary tangle of dense, mature, dead rhododendron and a new growth of rhododendron coming up through it. It would have been impenetrable multiplied by 2, and extremely difficult to carry out any clearance work in. We're in a different part of the same wood here, in another area which got a bad roasting from dead rhododendron. You can see here where the sort of parallel rhododendron branches, that's what was the edge of the rhododendron thicket, now good and dead and fairly heavily burned, and the severely damaged woodland in behind. A lot of shattered rock now coming off the bedrock here from the heat. And the scorched trees. Some small ones up on the cliffy face. They're managing to get the roots in. And again, the characteristic pattern of the parallel rhododendron branches. So we're further along the bottom of the same wood here now. I'm just panning from the open bog area where the fire burnt, and as with the other site, you can see here there's lying dead rhododendron that was killed with herbicide and is mixed up with this growth of young new rhododendron which has been badly scorched but not burnt. And then in behind you've got the oakwood area and loads of fuel unburned. So basically if this fire had come through about 5 years ago, probably this young rhododendron would not have been big enough or dense enough to stop the fire, and these areas of the wood would have been burnt through in places, if not entirely, with the same sort of consequences that we've already seen behind. In this bit of the wood we have a good illustration of a feature which has characterised rhododendron clearance in the national park for many, many years, namely the successive generations of rhododendron. So we have at the back there is rhododendron which was killed with herbicide probably 10, 12 years ago. It was maybe 30, 40 more years old, so that's killed. However, what we have here beside us is the next generation which has grown up happily through and under and beside the killed previous generation. And if we pan around, here we have this beautiful flower here, which this one flower next winter, if left, will produce about 5,000 airborne seeds. And looking up there I can see more and more the more I look. So what you have here effectively is 3 generations of rhododendron. The flowers with the seeds developing, the new generation that's producing them, and behind we have the dead rhododendron which produced them. But this sort of merry-go-round simply it isn't stopped, it keeps going, and the problem is simply not solved. I'm just panning over here. Okay, so you can see plenty of flowering rhododendron, and this thicket here would have come up after the rhododendron, the previous generation, was killed, so plenty of light got in, billions of, or millions certainly of, yeah, probably billions of seeds, growing up happily, quite dense, and now producing the next generation. And if this wood goes past next winter with the seeds produced and into the soil, even if you're to remove all of the rhododendron here, kill it all, you still haven't solved the problem, because every single one of these flowers will produce 5,000 seeds, so they'll be invisible in the soil, what's called the seed bank, with millions of seeds which will develop over the following 3, 4, 5 years. So this is the problem. As long as reseeding is allowed and that cycle of seeding is not broken, basically you're chasing your tail. Okay, we're further along in the same wood here now, and it's an area where there's some of the tallest trees in this area, and really some of the taller trees in the national park. And again we have this lethal mix of, across the little valley here, of very high dead rhododendron killed, and below that a very healthy growth of new rhododendron, and right through it we have these beautiful high straight oak trees, one here beside me. Now, as to why this area didn't burn through, it's not entirely clear. It may have been, as in the other section, that the new rhododendron is dense enough along the edge of the wood to stop it coming in. It's not impossible that the helicopters which were doing sterling work on the fire, certainly it seems over at Eagle's Nest, that they may also have protected this area considerably. But there's a very, very high density of dead rhododendron. If I just zoom in up there, you can see it's colossal thicket of dead rhododendron and very fine old oak trees. Again, up the slope here, dead rhododendron all over the place and beautiful oak trees. So the fact that the fire got in here, did not get in here for whatever reason, it's a miracle, and it's wonderful. Okay, we're a little bit further up now in the same wood, and we're getting into possibly even thicker rhododendron. Still beautiful trees off in the distance. A really very fine yew tree, very tall, extremely tall for a Killarney yew, or any yew from anywhere, I would imagine. And again, more oak, but dense, very high dead rhododendron, and plenty of young stuff coming up beneath. So again, this is a wood to celebrate. It escaped. If the fire came in here, there's ample fuel. As you can see, that fuel must be going up to 10, 15 feet high, maybe higher. And if the fire got in here, this piece of woodland would have been seriously damaged. So it didn't get in here. Where the credit lies is I don't know. Quite possibly firefighters, helicopter pilots dumping water, and also certainly in some of the areas because there's enough dead or new growth rhododendron to provide fire blocks down towards the edge of the wood. But a phenomenal amount of dead rhododendron here in a really gorgeous woodland. Okay, I'm in the same wood further along, facing south, and again the picture is becoming stronger and stronger of the wood which miraculously escaped. Again, massive amount of rhododendron, very fine trees. Just going to pan down. Very, very big, very dense. It must have been very old rhododendron. Looking off in the distance, I don't know whether that's the edge of the wood or not, but you can see the density of rhododendron there, all bone dry and ready to burn. Panning left, same story. And here you can see the dead rhododendron there stretching right up as high as the holly trees. It must be certainly 15 feet high, and below it you've got the new generation coming in. We're out of the wood now and at the woodland edge, and we're looking at what seemingly stopped the fire. So big bogland fire burning right in. Here's our dead rhododendron burnt along the base, heavily burnt there, and then behind we've got our thicket of new growth rhododendron coming up through the old, and seemingly the fire has stopped there. This again, the leaves are wilted, but they weren't actually burned. So this is the story right along, and then behind we have the wood we've just come through, and you can see the dead rhododendron standing in there. And it's hard to know. I mean, basically, there's two things that may have done the trick here. One is the new growth rhododendron stopping it going in. That certainly seems to have been happening in some places. We don't want to rule out the possibility and maybe the likelihood that there was assistance by firefighters, helicopters, etc. But one way or the other, this stopped the fire reaching a really superlative piece of woodland with a hell of a lot of dead, dry, high, burnable rhododendron, which would have wrecked it. So it's definitely the wood that had the lucky escape. I'm just going to zoom in here just to show you that's the sort of dead rhododendron these trees would have had to cope with.